Welcome to TGIF. Wow, this is the first TGIF of Lent. Well, I am so excited. What about you?
I'm really excited because we have something exciting going on at Centenary.
We do.
We now have a church app.
Very cool.
So awesome. If you have not downloaded our church app, be sure to text the number and the keyword on the screen so that you can download the app. You do not have to be a member of Centenary to download the app. You can access our worship services, what's going on, but what's specifically exciting for Lent is we have a Lent devotional that was written by members of the church and Pastor Tim as well that is available on the app. We do have a few limited copies. If you do need a physical one, just let the church office know. But shout out to Lindy.
Big shout out to Lindy. That was a lot of work getting all us people together and organized our thoughts and get them printed into a book.
And not only organizing this, but everything with the app. She is the mastermind that is now running the app. Another exciting thing for Lent is we have a family Lent calendar that we handed out at our Ash Wednesday drive-through service a couple days ago. If you did not drive through and your family would like a Lent calendar, we can get you one, just let us know. And Kingdom Kids, oh, shout out to Miss Christy and Miss Cindy.
Big shout out.
Have an amazing plan during Lent for Wednesday night Kingdom Kids that we are very excited about.
It's going to lead up to something for Palm Sunday too, right?
Exactly.
Big stuff. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't remember a lot about Ash Wednesday or Lent when I was growing up. I just know that we had a couple Catholic friends that were down the street, and when it come to Fridays, for some mysterious reason, when we were having tacos and beef, they would kind of ask me, why are you doing that? You're supposed to have fish on Friday. And so there would be all these kind of crazy conversations around that, but that was my experience growing up. What about you?
I had quite the experience. I went to Catholic school, so yes, the no meat on Fridays. I'm not sure we really observed that, but one thing I remember is we had to give something up. Not only did we have to give it up, we had to write down what we were giving up and turn it into the nun. And then
Get their approval.
right? And then if you cheated, you had to tell the nun, and you were pretty much busted. So
How'd that go for you?
well, I gave up things like chocolate and soda, but I will tell you, I did cheat a couple times, and in my mind, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to hell because I cheated. But I told the nun, and yeah, we'll just leave it at that. But my whole experience with Lent was you gave something up that you really liked, and when you did it, woohoo, you gave something up that you really liked. And yes, there was supposed to be as doing it in what Jesus did for us. Jesus gave up his life. But looking at that now, give up chocolate, give up your life.
Real spiritual depth, huh?
So I look at that and I just see so many people that are focused on giving something up, but they're not adding anything that really matters to their life, because there is no way we could give anything up that would even come.
Begin to compare, huh?
Yes, exactly. So that's kind of my experience growing up, and I've learned a lot since then.
Well, I'm looking forward to the next 5 weeks of TGIF because we are going to lay out 5 weeks of spiritual habits. Now, spiritual habits, sometimes that can feel pretty intimidating, a spiritual habit. Well, what is involved, and what do I have to sign to be a part of this spiritual habit? And the great thing about this is it's between you and God. It's time spent with God. And so we have 5 of them here, and you might want to write them down, right?
Yes, write these down. The first one is prayer,
Meditation,
generosity,
stillness,
and fasting.
So there they are. That's what we are going to do this week, or the next 5 weeks. And so this week we are starting off, and our first one is also our word of the day, which is prayer. And I don't know about you, but a lot of people come to me and ask me, what's the right way to pray? What's the best way to pray? And sometimes it gets complicated, but one of the things you have to remember is that this is a conversation between you and God. And I think it's plain and simple. That's what it is. It's this conversation between you and God, and to know and really lean in and trust that God is listening to you. That's what we see in the Bible, that when people talk to God, that there was this intimacy about it, but there was also this understanding that God was listening. And I think so many times people just think, well, God's not listening, God gave up, or God's gone down to the 7-Eleven to get a soda or something. I don't know. It's kind of crazy. But what we do in prayer is important and a huge value. And so as we're going into Lent, one of the things that Gina had mentioned, what are we adding in to our day, and where are we setting aside time for God, specific for God to work and do what God does best, and that's work in and through our lives. And so part of prayer is being intentional and saying, okay, I'm going to pray. And it's good to pray for your meals. That's always a good one. Praying for your children, your grandchildren, your aunts and all, praying for you. But what about just sitting with God and praying and entering into that attitude of thankfulness and entering into that, God, I messed up. I blew it. How can you help me through the corrective action or stepping in closer to you? And it gets really challenging. And I know it has for both of us in teaching our kids to pray. I think they often lean on us to do the prayer, and it's trying to coax them into the conversation. This is a conversation like you and I are having right now, right? It's a conversation that should be simple to enter into. And I think one of the places we see, if you're looking for a prayer, and it's not that it's the perfect prayer, but the disciples were confused too. So that's good news. The disciples were also confused. How should we pray? And so in Matthew chapter 6, verses 9 through 13, we have what we call is the Lord's Prayer.
And it reads as this. This then is how you should pray. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread, and forgive us our debtors, as we also have forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. I kind of messed up debt and debtors, but Jono fixed it on the screen, so we are good to go. So that is the Lord's Prayer, and it reads a little bit different than the way that we say it on Sundays in church. But what I love about the Lord's Prayer, when you have that prayer in your heart and you own it, you own the words.
I think that's what's key, owning the words.
And you know that was written, that's what Jesus gave his disciples, which in turn, that's what has been given to us. That is a prayer you can always fall back on. And when our son Jace, and you've heard a lot of the story before, when we were on our way from the doctor's office to Valley Children's Hospital, once they realized he had something major wrong with his heart, I remember being in the ambulance. The ambulance stopped in transport because we had to get other paramedics because they thought he had died. I was in the ambulance as well. And I remember getting back on the road, and the EMT was driving, and we're on our way to the hospital, and I just started saying the Lord's Prayer out loud. I didn't even have to think about, Lord, what am I going to pray? It just came out, and I said the Lord's Prayer over and over. And I can remember that day. I remember the final turn, getting to Children's Hospital, saying that prayer. And looking back, I pretty much know if that EMT did not know the Lord's Prayer, he knew it by the time we got to the hospital. And I wasn't just saying it to say words. Babble words is ritual. I was owning that. So the Lord's Prayer is very special to me. And I encourage you, when you're making space for God, because that's what prayer is, making space for God to have a conversation with God. When you do that, what words you are saying is between you and God, but the Lord's Prayer was intended to make you think, to make you reflect on things that matter. And so for me, I find that the Lord's Prayer every word is valuable. I do not say it on Sundays just to say it. I say it with meaning because it's a great reminder.
Yeah, I think it is. And when we're in this season of Lent, we've got to remember the heart and behind this. We've got to remember that it's about drawing closer to God in this time. While it's not about maybe, doing something better or being better at something, it's about recentering yourself, really. The focus of Lent is to refocus yourself and understand that I want to put God in the center of what I'm doing, God in the center of what He wants me to do. And when I think about Jesus, in that moment, He comes up from the water and is recognized by the Lord, and the pleasing and everything beautiful about that moment. And then he is taken immediately by the Spirit out into the desert for these 40 days. And he fasts for that time. And it's a time of, he's challenged. And so this should be a challenging time for us as well. So you need to put aside time to be challenged. And I would ask you that in your prayer, to really challenge yourself about the heart, where your heart is in the midst of prayer. And I think that's the big question that, when we leave you with something today, we want you to be mindful that this is about recentering and refocusing. And so it's a challenge.
And in these 5 habits, and the first one being prayer that we're going to cover in these next weeks, it's not that it's a habit that we just do during these 40 days of Lent, but it's that it becomes part of your daily routine, your rhythm in what you do, and in that making space for God through prayer and these other habits that we're going to talk about. So we encourage you to take Lent, I don't want to say serious for lack of better words.
But leaning into it.
Yeah.
Lean into it.
Lean into Lent. Maybe you were like me as a child and I'm going to give this up. I'm going to make sure my kids give something up and we're good. Lent is about so much more.
Adding something of value back
in. And these habits that we're creating, those aren't the end all. The end all, the point, the goal of it is that intimate, deeper relationship with God that can come through Lent if you lean in and engage in these spiritual habits that become part of your daily life. That the Lord's Prayer is what comes to mind when you're in great need. That God puts these things on your heart because it's all within you and it's with who you are.
And that really takes us to that question of the day too. I mean, I think this is the question. Are you going to make the space?
Right.
Really? Will you make space for prayer? Is it just going to be in the 2 minutes after I have my cup of coffee and I've got to get off to work? It could be 2 minutes.
And you can talk to God all day long. I mean, sometimes I think I talk to him all the time. You think I'm talking to myself. But you can talk to God when you're driving, and that's that open conversation. Yeah, that's praying. That's all good. But making that space for that dedicated time of prayer, I think that's where I need to be more intentional. That dedicated space, removing all the noise around me and really just engaging in prayer.
Yeah, because do you really want what the Lord's Prayer says? Your will be done? Well, your will, God's will being done in your life takes intentionality, takes leaning in, takes time to listen. It takes time to pray about it. So that's what we leave them with this week. We're going to make prayer. Will you make space for prayer?
And we hope you would join us again in the next week.
And read your devotionals.
Exactly. Download the app.
Absolutely.
Make sure your kids are on Kingdom Kids. Let us know if you need a family Lent calendar. But we just hope that you don't enter this Lent season, this Easter season, the same as you always have. Lean in, engage, trust and know that God is going to do something great.
Amen. I love that. God is going to do something great. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.